Good evening, everyone. My name is Poppy and I'll be your cheer for this evening. Firstly, I'd like to say a massive thank you and diolch to all of you for joining us this evening at Climate Cymru Speed Hustings in partnership with the Youth Climate Ambassadors for Wales, a group of which I am very proud to be chair of. And of course, thank you to all of our candidates here today. We have candidates from the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, the Green Party, Plaid Cymru, Reform UK and the Conservative Party. It's great to be joined by you all. Firstly, I just want to cover a little bit of housekeeping. As Susie mentioned, there are translation services available. You all, as attendees, are also muted and don't have cameras. And we do encourage open-minded discussion in the chat. However, abuse will not be tolerated and you will be removed from the event. In addition to this, if you want to ask any of our candidates questions, please use the Q&A section. And finally, we aren't planning any fire drills this evening, so if you do hear one, I very much recommend that you step away from your computer. Now, YCA and Climate Cymru are two climate-centred groups. Climate Cymru is a campaign aiming to take 50,000 Welsh voices to COP26 this November. And for those of you who don't know, COP is the United Nations Conference for Climate Change and is significant in shaping international climate legislation and goals. As opening statements, can I ask that for each representative to give a 2-minute speech answering what your party's approach to COP will be and how you plan to spread the message of climate organisations like Climate Cymru. Audience, please put any questions that you have for our candidates into the chat during their opening speeches. As this is a super speedy speed hustings, we won't have a long time to answer them later on. So it is vital that you do this when you can, which is now. So firstly, I'd like to welcome Callum Davis from the Conservative Party to start. Thank you.
Well, hi then. Thank you for inviting me to represent the Welsh Conservatives this evening. We've got a very exciting environmental policy package going to this election, from a Clean Air Act and delivering 15,000 green jobs to a deposit return scheme for plastic bottles and ensuring all new housing developments are carbon neutral by 2026. We are delighted that COP26 is being held in the UK this year, and we reaffirm our commitment to deliver net zero carbon emissions by 2050. The Welsh Conservatives further believe that the UK Conservative government's 10-point plan will be crucial in the run-up to hosting the summit, where the UK will call for further global action. This will include producing enough offshore wind to power every home, investing in carbon capture technology, delivering cleaner nuclear energy, and ending the sale of new petrol and diesel cars and vans by 2030. We welcome the Prime Minister's pledge to cut carbon emissions by 78% compared to 1990 levels, and that will happen by 2035 and will become law by the end of June this year. COP26 is a great chance to lead the world by building relationships and agreeing a global plan to tackling climate change. A global plan not only because it's a global problem, but demands a global solution too. The approach we are taking is designed to be incremental in a way that is economically positive and gives time to introduce the changes properly and crucially with public support. The way some activists have behaved may be passionate, but are counterproductive to gaining the necessary public support to meet these shared goals. So while the Welsh Labour government have had years to address this now, even though declaring a climate emergency was relegated to any other business and cabinet discussions, it is great that the major parties and smaller parties like the Lib Dems and the Greens have ambitious environmental policy platforms. But I think the Conservatives are the right mix of ambition and realism to lead to achievable, workable results. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to hand over to Jackie Jones from the Labour Party.
Hello there, everyone. Thanks very much for inviting me, and it's wonderful to be with you. I'm on my phone, so I'm hoping the technology will last. So I apologies if it goes off because the internet on the computer is just not working. I'm a Labour and Cooperative Party candidate for the Welsh elections in Preseli, Pembrokeshire. And that constituency is very rural, but also has some urban areas in it. And I think that's part of the theme, isn't it? Making sure that we've got climate actions appropriate for the areas. And that's one of the things that the Labour Party is advocating. So it's an internationalist party, so therefore COP26, the approach is in order to get cooperation across the board. pollution doesn't have any borders. So climate change doesn't have any borders. So we have to work together, and certainly the Labour Party and the Cooperative Party, that's the main ethos of that. So how are we going to do it? Well, I didn't hear Biden's speech, but I heard that he has committed to today. Sorry, that's my dog going to bark in a minute in the background. Sorry about all these distractions. But I heard that he has reduced he has brought forward the targets to 2026, I believe. I might have heard it wrong, but somebody was telling me just as we were out canvassing. So I think that's a really good step forward if it is, as they said, and we can work with that. Working with other nations is absolutely key. But when it comes, I haven't talked about the manifesto. I presume that they'll have a question about that yet when we speak later. But it isn't just about internationalism, it's also about locality, and it's making sure that our footprint is much, much smaller, and our manifesto is full of ideas and progress on having local supply chains, having local people gathered together in communities in order to reduce the carbon footprint. We've also obviously introduced NVZs, nitrate vulnerable zones, all over Wales in order to help with the climate pollution here. So we're going to be bringing all of those things and lots more that hopefully we'll be talking about in the half hour that we've got to COP26. But for me, it's a cooperative approach, internationalist approach, having local locality at the very center, which might sound counterintuitive, but it's not actually. It's reducing the carbon footprint there. I don't know how much time I've got left, but that's.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. I will now be handing over to David Wilkins from the Liberal Democrats.
Hi, thank you very much for having me this evening. I'm a candidate up here in North Wales, Clwyd West, Colwyn Bay. I have a bit of a mix between sort of a bit of an urban feel and a bit of a rural feel. And sometimes the environment can feel like a competition between the two. The countryside can look at the city and say, look how polluting you are. And the developed city will look at the countryside and look at the farmers and blame them. We love to blame each other for creating environmental damage. And it's very interesting to hear what some of the other candidates have said already. Now, I'm really keen that we start to take a little bit more responsibility for our pollution. Jackie mentioned it, there is no border to this. And how much of our carbon emissions are we offsetting currently by shipping that work out to China? I think what's really, really important, if we're genuinely to change the direction we're heading in, is if we invest locally. And the Lib Dems have pledged to invest $1 billion a year to fight the climate emergency by building new jobs, developing sustainable technology, supply chains that work locally, creating similar sort of local hubs, the 20-minute neighborhoods, so that we can break the cycle of everyone needing to own a car. We can develop, we pledge to pass a Green Homes Act so that houses can be built smarter, made more energy efficient. We can tackle some of the legacy developments that cause water runoff, leading to flooding as we respond to more and more extreme weather. And it's really important as well that we need to look after what we have locally. So let's take action to protect biodiversity, look after things like bees and insects in the amazing countryside we have here in Wales. So yes, that's what we do as Lib Dems. I can hear the bell somewhere.
Amazing, thank you. Yes, that bell is my new favourite thing. I will now be handing over to Granville Han from Plaid Cymru.
There we are. All right, can you hear me now? So I'm looking at it as what if Plaid were in government when the time COP26 starts? And I think if we were, we'd go along and the first thing we'd do is we'd be honest. We'd be honest about how, despite having ample resources in Wales, we floundered. Honest about how in Wales the species are still in decline, and honest about the part as a developed nation that we have played in making so many people around the world vulnerable to this problem. And our approach is also going to be about following the science, and we'll remind every fellow nation that if we learn anything from the last 12 months is that we need to follow the science to avoid disaster. And the climate science is screaming at us now that it's time to put the pedal to the floor. Our main approach to COP and to combating the problem is to unlock the barriers we've got in here. We know that in Wales, the electricity grid has been full. Where I live, we've been unable to develop renewable energy schemes for over 7 years. And in a time of crisis, that is unacceptable. So we talk about Plaid Cymru's plans for Ynni Cymru, a state-owned renewable energy development agency, delivering the 21st century infrastructure that we need, as well as the jobs and funding research into these solutions that we can then send out to the rest of the world. And we're also clear that we want the destiny of Wales in Welsh hands. So we want to be like any normal country, where we can borrow money to invest in the solutions, where we can create laws and we can make partnerships across the EU and our friends around the world. But also we want to show leadership, and that means enshrining net zero emissions by 2035. We want statutory targets to restore biodiversity and reconnect our ecosystems. And we want to ban all single-use plastics this year and to stop any waste from going to landfill by 2030. And again, on a human level, we want to reiterate our desire to be a nation of sanctuary for climate refugees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now be handing over to Claire Eno from Reform UK.
Hello, I'm a marine biologist and spent my career advising governments on marine activities, right up to advising the United Nations as the UK representative on meetings on biodiversity. When I was your age, I was inspired to care for nature. So I followed my dream and studied marine biology at Swansea University. Working in marine conservation, I've really made a difference. So I'm delighted that you too can have your sights set at such a young age to help care for the environment. We in Reform UK recognise the need for young scientists and engineers, as well as activists and policymakers, to innovate and develop the technology to build and deliver a net zero carbon future. To help achieve Climate Cymru's mission, we believe everybody in Wales needs to play their part. Government needs to support communities to change how we travel, shop, and heat our homes. If more people now wish to work from home, then we'd support creating local hubs where people can still socially interact without the need to travel. The shift towards electric cars is a key feature of reducing the impact on the environment. To power and demand for electricity, we need to increase the amount that comes from renewable sources. So we at Reform UK look to harness the energy of the sea. Indeed, around Wales, we have some of the most powerful tides in the world. So in Reform UK's contract with the people of Wales, we pledge we will support and invest in tidal energy to make Wales a leader in tidal, in this technology. We'll work with local authorities to create an electric vehicle charging network, and will create a national forest for Wales with open access to all. So each of these actions will help ensure Wales plays a leading role in COP26 and beyond. And believe me, I've commented on the proposals for Wales and can assure you the future is bright. So vote Reform and we'll work with you to make it happen.
Thank you very much, Claire. And finally, last but not least, over to Amelia Womack from the Green Party. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Poppy, and thank you to everyone who's attending. I feel that I myself worked in the environment from a young age and has been passionate, but it's been the young generation today that has proven that I hate it when people say young people are the future, because you're the now, you're the present, and you're making change happen. So thank you for everyone involved in Climate Cymru, making sure that we're pushing for those vital reforms that we need. As the Green Party, we know that the best time to have put environmental policy in place was 30 years ago, especially when it comes to climate change. But the second best time is right here and right now. And this is why we need Greens for the first time to be elected into the Welsh Parliament. What we see across the country, where we have Greens represented in Northern Ireland, Scotland, London, in councils, in Westminster, is that green scrutiny that is so vital and important to make sure that we're reducing our carbon emissions and restoring nature to protect us from the climate and ecological emergency while addressing inequalities in our communities at the same time. Looking forward to COP, this is what we do every day as Greens, is scrutinise the government and their inevitable greenwash, the UK government and the Welsh government and governments around the world. As the Greens, we work internationally with Greens in countries all around the world. And for COP, we've been bringing together our priorities, not just as political parties, but working with intersectional groups within them, ensuring that we're talking about how we address the climate emergency from the perspective of women, of Indigenous people, and many more. As Greens, we are at the heart of our policy is a Green New Deal, investing in tens of thousands of new jobs, renewable energy, public transport, the list goes on. This has been at the heart of our policies. Addressing climate change, the ecological emergency and inequality has been at the heart of our policies since our founding day. And as today is Earth Day, we know as Greens that Earth Day isn't just one day a year, it is every day. And by getting Greens in the Senedd, we can ensure that that happens.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you all for your opening statements. It was very refreshing to hear. Now, thank you to all of our attendees who have put questions into the Q&A section. I'm going to summarise all of the questions now as best as I can and then pitch them to each of our representatives today, who will answer them in reverse alphabetical order. So the question, I suppose, is, what key points do your party's manifesto cover in regards to key pieces of climate legislation, like deforestation, green homes for young people, renewable energy, and especially the end of the use of fossil fuels? And how will you support a diverse range of voices, including young people, to reach COP26? I'll give you guys a few seconds to write that down. Thank you. And then when you're ready, if we start with Amelia from the Green Party again, please.
Can you repeat it though, Poppy, please?
That
was a lot.
Sorry, so what key points do your party's manifesto cover in regards to key pieces of climate policy, like deforestation, green homes, renewable energy, and especially the end of the use of fossil fuels? And how will you support a diverse range of voices, including young people, to be heard at COP? Fabulous. Amelia, when you're ready, if you don't mind starting, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Poppy. We know that what we need to do is transform how we currently work and operate. I travel the country and I talk to people who all they want is the greenest option to be the cheapest and the easiest option. Why are we getting something that's polluting by default? That is going to need to change by, I mean, just think of kind of water bottles. We just get plastic bottles by default. Through legislation and policy change, we'd be able to fundamentally change that. Looking at our targets for climate to reduce our carbon emissions, we want to be net carbon zero by 2030. We're not going to do this with national policies alone. This will take ensuring that we're investing in green business, which is why we want to set up the Green Transformation Fund, in it, creating bonds where people are able, businesses and enterprises are then able to pitch for money to ensure that they are working within communities to reduce carbon emissions and restore nature. Because it's at the grassroots that we make change happen. If we only focus on the kind of policy level, we're not going to make net carbon zero. It has to be in every section of our society. We want to advocate for a carbon tax, as well as ensuring that we're investing in public transport. We want to replace all fossil fuels with renewable energy, again, creating more green jobs and ensuring that we've got the necessary upgrades to the electricity grid. We want to ensure that we have those small scale actions, putting renewable energy into the hands of communities and ensuring that people benefit from those actions, whether that's working on greening and retrofitting homes, ensuring that people's energy bills are cheaper. In fact, green councillors in other parts of the UK have put solar panels on people's homes as part of being a councillor to ensure that we're tackling issues like fuel poverty, where people have to choose between putting a roof over their head and food on their table, while also reducing people's carbon emissions by keeping energy costs down. Green housing is such a vital thing to be talking about, especially for young people, and making sure that we are building new homes to the highest environmental standards is so vital and important, because effectively what we're creating is the infrastructure of what we work with for generations to come. in terms of diverse voices, I think that it's important that we have young people who are part of decision-making processes. One thing that we've been advocating is for youth voices, for the Youth Parliament to be putting forward a policy each year so that young people get a chance to have a say in the future of politics. And I think it's at COP itself, actually having that youth representation is essential. As someone who is a young person starting in politics, it's been, I've always been so, it's just, young people have to, I think that nobody understands what it's like to be like 19, 20, 16, whatever you might be.
To a close, Amelia, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I had such a long list with all of those questions, sorry. I didn't hear the bell.
Sorry, thank you. Next over to Claire Eno from Reform UK. Thank you, Amelia.
Thank you. Well, in a sense, I answered the question before, but I'll just reiterate some of the points. You know, we have brought out essentially a contract with the people, and this came out 2 days ago. And we said in this that in order to meet our commitments for the climate, we need everybody to work together. So we need everybody in Wales to do their part, really. We need government to support communities to change how we travel, shop and heat our homes. And we've made strong commitments to supporting renewable energy, and in particular tidal. So you have subsea turbines as well as other forms of tidal energy that can be used around Wales. So we would really push for those to go ahead. And we'd build an electric vehicle charging network. So essentially, that would allow for the country to be joined up, and it would also provide free energy to services that were necessary. So there'd be free transport, free energy would be provided as transport. So essentially you'd have more rural transport. You know, in parts of Wales, rural transport is abysmal. And so everybody uses their cars because they can't get sufficient transport. There might be one bus a day if you're lucky. So if these were charged using the electric vehicle charging network, then there would be no excuse to have such poor services. And as I said, we'd have a national forest. So it'd be open to all, and that would help provide, you know, an offset of carbon that was being produced, so that you'd have oxygen being put out. So I think without reform, things won't happen.
Sorry, that was your 2-minute bell. So maybe a final quick sentence, if that's okay.
Well, just that, without reform, things won't happen. So essentially, you'll vote for reform, and we will really engage people and make things happen. We're a party that gets things done.
Thank you. And next over to Grenville Ham from Plaid Cymru.
Okay, thank you. That is an insanely long list. I will try and do my best. In regards to fossil fuels, I think if anyone that knows me, it's a relic of the past. It is not part of our future. We've got a commitment implied that we'll be 100% of our energy from electricity by 2035. We would love it to be sooner, but the practicality is I work in electrical engineering. I design a lot of the renewable energy systems across Wales. We cannot build the grid that we need to do this in quicker than 6 years. So we can't really start delivering for a while. Ultimately, we need to electrify everything. We have the natural resources in Wales to do that. We've already identified across Wales enough to do about 126% of all the energy requirements for Wales from renewables. So we're not talking pie in the sky stuff. This is before we start looking into the hydrogen and the future tech. Supporting organisations like Climate Cymru, and young people. When I was young, I'm in my early 40s now, when I was in my 20s, I won the UK's biggest ever climate change innovation prize. I reinvested all the winnings from that into a number of local companies that have been creating jobs for local people. And we've built around about 100 renewable energy schemes across Wales, many of which are owned by the community. And a lot of these villages now, they earn 20, 30, 40,000 pounds a year that they reinvest back into their own green technologies. I think what I learned is you need to have people in power to be slightly visionary, to provide funding for seed ideas, seed organisations. I was rejected in every single Welsh department for my ideas. Within 18 months, I'd won the UK's biggest climate change fund. We can do things better, but we need to take risks. And I think young people with support, particularly financial support, can set up the organisations that are going to be the future and the bedrock of our green economy. And quickly, in regards to homes, it's essential that they are low carbon and they are low energy. But equally, in terms of the affordability side of things, we've got to remember 50% of the price of a new home is the land, and the land prices are dictated by planning policy. The Welsh Government are in control of planning policy, therefore we can make homes genuinely affordable for young people. And me, I've got a 19-year-old daughter. I'm desperately worried she's not going to return
That's
home
your 2-minute
after
bell,
university.
sorry. Amazing. Do you want to do one last final sentence, or are you okay?
I'm fine, thank you.
Amazing, thank you. And now over to David Wilkins from the Liberal Democrats. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to I'm going to go through them in order. I think I've written down the right order anyway. So in terms of deforestation, we have a pledge in our manifesto that we will actually look at keeping a minimum of 20% tree coverage in urban areas, and that we'll have 30% in new developments. So making sure that we maintain as greater biodiversity. Trees bring a mental health benefit. They bring all sorts of additional benefits like absorbing water and returning it back into the atmosphere to reduce flooding. We're very big. The idea I mentioned earlier, £1 billion to be invested every year in Wales, including in projects for hydrogen production in places like Holyhead, so that we can start to move away from the dependence on the fossil fuel, the petrol and diesel in our cars, move ourselves forward, be progressive in that sense. I do like the idea of electric only. Unfortunately, there is still some questions around how we store electrical energy, and hydrogen is going to help us, a hydrogen economy in a similar sense to petrol fuel filling stations, could go a long way to meeting that need. I think it's really important as well that we look to the wider world as well, making ourselves role models and leaders. So a hub in Port Talbot making offshore wind turbines to service obviously the Welsh coast, but also exporting that expertise and exporting that industrial strength outwards to the UK, outwards into Europe, and hopefully the rest of the world, because this isn't something we need to do. This is a journey that we need to help everybody else make as well. And that's not from a patronizing sense. That's from a collaborating and finding the solutions for people in other places as they also move towards a net zero. We can't just export our carbon elsewhere. We have to take account for it. I love the idea of additional trees. A national forest for Wales sounds like a fantastic idea. I'll get my wellies, I'll get my spade. Let's get on it. We cannot wait any longer. We need to take the action now.
Amazing, thank you very much. And next over to Jackie Jones from the Labour Party. DL.
Thank you very much. I think it's absolutely fantastic that near enough all of the parties have good, solid green credentials this time in the manifesto. So I want to laud that, and I think that's fantastic because we haven't really seen that before, apart from the Greens, of course, obviously, have always been very much environmental, obviously. When it comes to the Welsh Government, of course, it's done quite a lot already. It's banned fracking. It's launched the creation of a national forest for Wales. It's helped protect over 70,000 homes from flooding, and a network of flood defences as well have been funded. There have been the NVZs, as I've said, to reduce agricultural pollution, and there have been, of course, also 40 Blue Flag awards in beaches and things. So we do have some really good positive developments, but of course we have to and we should do more. So, for example, the manifesto talks about abolishing the use of more commonly littered single-use plastics, creating a larger national forest and also tiny forests in urban areas as well, if we can, and more flood protections, and creating a system of farm support, which will hopefully get farmers on board with having some more environmental friendly policies. Not that they're not environmentally friendly, but everything can always be done a little bit better. We've also, this is not the 2 minutes up, is it?
30 seconds left.
Oh, sorry. We've got also in our manifesto biodiversity proposals about pollinators and native fruits. I'd like to see orchards in schools. We've got 20,000 carbon zero houses to be built to rent, but not on green sites. And when it comes to, and there's also community land trust that we're supporting, and tidal power as well. When it comes to representation, diverse representation, I want to make sure that I cover that. The Climate Ambassador are doing a great job. And I think we need more of those kind of initiatives. And of course, the 50,000 Voices to COP26, absolutely fantastic initiative. And I'd like to see under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, the need for an advisory group, at least inside government, that this is listened to, because we have to work together on this, like I said before.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And finally, Callum Davis from the Welsh Conservatives. Thank you.
Well, a lot to get through, so forgive me if I sound like I'm in an Aaron Sorkin drama. I'll take them in reverse order. So if you want to hear young voices at COP26, maybe you should vote for a young candidate, hint, hint, stand in Cardiff Central. But also you can use voices such as the Welsh Youth Parliament. But importantly, you guys are a group, you're one of these external organisations. That's the thing to do, act as a group, get organised, be a louder voice. To use a very cheesy phrase, be the change you want to see, and really get organised to make sure people will hear in that way. When it comes to things like deforestation, the Welsh Conservatives want to plant 8 million trees. And when it comes to how communities can act in themselves, we will introduce a community ownership fund and a right to bid. So that would help community take over green spaces and protect them, for instance. When it comes to deforestation abroad as well, you've got to challenge, you need to get ethical procurement, and a part of doing that is ethical consumerism as well. If you don't like a company's work and practices, then you shouldn't use their products and services. If you then get a critical mass of people who agree with you, then they will have to change their ways. That's the best way to get change, and because government shouldn't have to be our consciences for us, we have to actually act on our own instincts. And when it comes to more general things in our manifesto, when it comes to the environment, well, we've already said net zero targets, net zero carbon emissions targets by 2050, as well as zero carbon homes by 2026, 15,000 long-term green collar jobs, Clean Air Act. Other things include working with the private sector to attract the world's first gigafactory to build batteries for electric vehicles, then put in the infrastructure, so that's 20,000 fast charging points for those electric vehicles. And other things include a £150 million Wales Marine Energy Investment Fund. I don't know where I am in the 2 minutes. I'll simply say that's just the start of what the Conservatives can do for the environment in Wales. Thank you.
Fabulous, thank you. Now, I am cautious that we have run over, but I'd be really appreciative if each of the candidates could give one final sentence, like literally no more than 20 seconds, discussing how you'll support Climate Cymru. Bit of a cheeky question there, but you know, this is what we're here for. So should we start again? Callum, are you happy to start?
Sure, I'll just say when it comes to any group, the best thing to do is approach your candidate and approach your elected candidate in a way that they can get on board with, and make sure that the plans are something that is something that the public can also get on board with. Thank you.
Fabulous, thank you. Jackie?
In every and any way I can. Is that short enough?
That's perfect, thank you. David?
It's difficult. Jackie's pinched the perfect answer there. I will do everything I can. I'm already trying to do it. I've cycled to work today. I've given up my car. I've made changes to my own personal lifestyle, and I will continue to go on encouraging others to make the same lifestyle changes so we can build a better world.
Granville?
Yeah, echo what everyone else says anywhere I can. And equally, you know, I'm one of the people in Wales that's set up similar organisations, so it would be very useful in a professional context to collaborate.
Thank you. Claire?
Oh, thank you. Well, personally, I've got a proven talent in actually helping getting people together to help them achieve something far greater, and that's really the ethos within Reform UK. So we bring you all together, we bring in all the ideas, and we listen to them, and then we get everybody together and work forward to achieve your aims.
Perfect, thank you. And finally, Amelia.
We all know that we're stronger when we collaborate, and collaborating with Climate Cymru is just an organisation who have the exact same ethos at the heart as we do in the Green Party. So I would want to continue to kind of build on that in the future. And I know that together in that instance, we can really transform Wales.
Fabulous. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and thank you to our candidates for taking part in our speed hustings. We hope that this has reassured you as to who you will be voting for on May the 6th. We also hope that this has empowered you further to use your vote, because it is vital that you remember that your voice matters in this election and always. There should be a poll appearing on your screen, and we'd be super grateful if you could fill this out. Now, just finally, again, thank you all. Stay safe and remember to add your voice to the Climate Cymru campaign. Diolch.